Toph's top 5 because 10 is too many. Toph's top 5 because Nubs is too busy. Toph's top 5, I don't know what he's up to, but he's clearly busy. So let's talk about some tunes, cause it's Toph's top 5. Yeah! Yeah. Hello. Menswear. I've been on a Are You Being Served kick. You know that show? Are You Being Served? Old British show from the 70s. And I used to watch it when there was nothing on, Skinamax. They would play the show on PBS, sort of late night when I was like a teenager, and used to stay up to watch Are You Being Served, which is set at a department store, Grace Brothers, owned by young Mr. Grace. And used to think it was funny, and then found this app called BritBox, which is like all this British TV. I love this British shit. And they have, the full slate of Are You Being Served? And I'm like 5 seasons in. So I'm on a roll. Great show. But Mr. Humphrey is probably my favorite character whenever he answers the phone. He's a very flamboyant, sort of ambiguously feminine kind of guy. But whenever he answers the phone, he goes, menswear. Because he works in the menswear department. Welcome. First Toph's Top 5 in a while. Because Nubs is too busy. Whenever Nubs gets, really busy, just really too busy for me. Too cool for school. I think right now he's like on a ski trip or, some fancy dancy thing. I sort of figure, hey, maybe it's time for a little top 5 action. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully we'll be back pretty soon with a full episode. It's his turn, obviously. The last one we did Boston. And previous to that, we did Journey. So I'm not sure. I do know what he has up his sleeve. And it's just a slight departure from Boston and Journey. So you'll know it when you see it. Often it's a group that's often in the same, sentence and in the same circles. But, today we're going to focus on, part of the Toph's Top 5 is, you can sort of venture out into groups that we probably wouldn't do a album episode about, right? This is very likely one of them. I wouldn't even know which record to do. But, tried to kind of give you a few different looks. We did Madonna. Everything from Madonna to the KLF. And everything from, Steely Dan to Nine Inch Nails. That's kind of how this is rolled. So we'll keep the variety going. But this is a band that, there've been a few in the last like 20 years that have had the cross appeal, had certainly the mainstream and top 40 appeal, and have had really a front man who has kind of like ventured off to become his own celebrity, TV and all this. Yet has maintained its status as a band. Now, I'm sure probably more often than not during the last, decade plus, I'd be surprised if like the whole band is like in the studio, or that there's a lot of like jamming going on to compose and produce and execute these songs. But nonetheless, Adam Levine probably had plenty of opportunities to break off and be a solo artist, but I do give him props because he's kind of always said and has always stuck to his enjoyment of being in a band, which is pretty cool, actually. So I think there's something kind of cool about that. Hey, Maroon 5 may not be everyone's cup of tea, not always necessarily mine, but they have amassed a catalog that makes it kind of interesting to pick through and figure out where there were good moments. So that's what we're going to do. But first, an album worth mentioning.
I will now sell 5 copies of the 3 EPs by the Beta Band.
Okay, so not so much an album, actually, but a project that is kind of worth checking out. So it really wouldn't qualify, I guess, for round and round. But, for this, I figure, throw it out there. And that is it's not a band, really. It's, I guess, sort of a solo project called Publicist. And, fronted by a guy named Sebastian Thompson, who I will always know and love as the drummer for the band Trans Am and its many side versions and projects. Most people probably know him now as the drummer for Baroness, which is all in all is cool. I mean, I haven't liked what they've done as much the last couple of albums. I think Nubs would agree. It's a little bit John Theodore-esque with Queens of the Stone Age that, you've got this unbelievable drummer that is sort of coming up through both actually came up through the Northern California, kind of San Francisco, Northern California, Sensimilla region as sort of indie drummers. And, John eventually would join the Mars Volta and then eventually would join Queens of the Stone Age, but kind of cut his teeth in a similar way, coming up more through the kind of indie scene, as did Sebastian Thompson, or Seb, as he's more affectionately known. And then got the opportunity to join Baroness and be more of a, a little bit more, I guess, mainstream within sort of the metal rock-ish scene, which is great. I'm sure financially it's good for him. It's a good regular gig. He's done some good drumming on the last couple of records, even though I don't think they're quite as good as the early Baroness stuff. But before joining that group, he obviously played for one of my favorite groups of all time, that being Trans Am. And he's an incredible drummer, and got to see him a couple times with Trans Am. And he did this little side thing called Publicist. And better than looking for any recordings, just go on YouTube. And he's got a couple of performances. He mostly did this over in Europe, I think. One of the performances in particular, he's just like out on the street, and he has like a backing track, like lots of sort of synthesizer stuff. And then he plays, live drums along with it. And then, I don't know how many of you listening have checked out Trans Am. Some have, I know, from the podcast, but they use a vocoder, which is that like robot kind of voice thing, and he sings, I guess, through a vocoder and drums along with this electronic. It's very cool. And especially these performances, like one of the performances is like out on the street. I don't even know what city it's in. It looks like it's in Europe or something, and people are just jamming, like going nuts. He's got all these people around, and then he's just like sitting there with this drum set in the middle of a crowd, just like play. I mean, it's pretty neat. So check out Publicist. YouTube is probably the place to do it, and check out that performance on the street in particular. Okay. Maroon 5 is an interesting situation for me personally, because I've got kind of a unique thing with this band. I moved to New York City right after college. So this would have been like, 2002 ish. And used to go to just a ton of shows. I mean, was working, going to school a little bit for grad school kind of at night. But other than that, I mean, I was like going to as many shows as possible. I lived there for 4 years, and there was a venue, there are many favorite venues out there, but there's one called Irving Plaza, which still exists over near Union Square, I think ish. And one of the nights I think somebody suggested, and it wasn't a big venue. It was not, this is not where, I mean, the larger rock club type places were more like Roseanne Ballroom, Hammerstein Ballroom, etc. Irving Plaza was a bit smaller. And it wasn't, it's not Little League, but it certainly, it was not like a large theater or even like a medium sized theater. And I think someone, if I remember correctly, suggested to me to go see this band that was playing called Maroon 5. I was like, these guys are up and coming and people are talking about them, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whatever. So sure. I never heard of them or heard them whatsoever. And, you could tell from the crowd size. I mean, there were like a couple hundred people there. I mean, it was not full by any means. The band came out, and I've never seen a band carry itself, and I guess a frontman in particular carry himself in a way that was so confident to a small crowd. I mean, he was kind of up there performing like it was an arena show, when meanwhile it was for a kind of half full, rather small theater in Manhattan. And I remember thinking that was very interesting. Like I'd been to a ton of shows, but I'd never seen that before. This kind of moxie and I guess swagger was just, it's like, okay, this guy believes in what they're doing. Okay. And they were playing their songs and whatever. And they must have just put out their album because, it wasn't long after it came out. And you could tell they weren't up there to play for like 2 hours and pull from like a vast, I think there were a couple covers in there and whatever. So anyway, they were chugging along playing their stuff. And then they played this song that had this kind of groovy sort of beat to it. And the crowd went absolutely bonkers, like just ape shit for this song called This Love. And I remember standing there being like, oh my God, like either like this song is known by the people here, because I mean, I'm sure there were people there that were familiar, with the group. And I just remember standing there and kind of looking around and being like, oh my God, this place is like bedlam over this song they're playing. And I'm sure I'll hear this song many, many times because, I really had never seen a response like that. And, he had Adam had the fingerless gloves and he was kind of glammed out a little bit. It was just, there was something kind of cool about it, and this was, keep in mind, this is long before they were like on the radio or popular or had gone pop this was like a band, this was guitar, bass, drums, piano, keyboard, right? I mean, this was a rock band. And, I remember leaving there and I think I called somebody up or I was telling somebody about it and said, yeah, watch for those guys. Yeah, it's going to happen. Probably going to happen soon. And lo and behold, it's a matter of like weeks later, started hearing Harder to Breathe on the radio and then eventually This Love, and away they went. But yeah, kind of interesting with that group. And then they certainly morphed further away from, being more of a stripped down rock band to more of a pop group, more electronica, more production, more songwriting support, more featurings and duets and all this stuff, and moving like Jagger. And, it kind of went in a direction that certainly was good for them commercially, but took them pretty far away from kind of what they started as. And that doesn't mean there wasn't some good stuff, and we'll get to it, in there, but certainly went from, I think, a rock star in a rock group to a pop star and, media tabloid celebrity. And probably kind of that's where they sit today. I mean, I think I give them credit for staying as a band, and I think that's cool. And I don't think there's been that much turnover. I believe, unless I'm, not up to speed on my Maroon 5, that for the most part, the core guys have stuck together. Maybe one or two have bailed, but so I give them credit for that. Well, why don't we get down to it and let's talk through these guys and see, when you kind of unpack the catalog, where some of their brightest moments would be as we go top 5. Let's roll. All right, so you're probably going to find that most of this kind of airs on the side of their sort of earlier stuff. I like when they tended to, play their instruments, more so than not. But there's really, there's 2 songs off one of the records they did with Mutt Lange. There is one off the debut, one off the sophomore record, and then another one that came a little bit later. So why don't we start with
Number 5. Please, call me Johnny 5. Johnny? You have taken name for yourself?
Okay, this was the record. It was called Hands All Over in 2010 that probably took them squarely in the pop commercial direction, produced by Mutt Lange. And there were singles on this record, but there's really 2 moments that are going to make the top 5 that probably would be considered more album cuts. And this first one is track 3 on that record, and it's called Stutter. Hey, you can really hear the Mutt Lange with that mid-tempo kind of 4 on the floor thing that he often brought to the table. A lot of the layering, both vocally and from instrumentation. But I like the way it grooves along. I think this was actually a pretty cool album. After this, it got really poppy, but this is where you kind of still felt like they were an instrument band, just receiving some additional production. But hey, when it's Mutt Lange, you can't complain too much, right? Yeah, so this brought that kind of era for the group of going to that next level commercially, which I wouldn't say this album as a whole is great, but definitely had its moments where you couldn't argue with the catchiness, etc. They recorded Moves Like Jagger, which I really don't like. You're not going to see that on the top 5 there. But they did record that during the sessions for Hands All Over, in addition to this track. So Stutter comes in at number 5 with that unmistakable Mutt Lange production that you will hear again.
4! Fine shot. Oh! I should have yelled 2.
Yeah, should have yelled 2. This next one comes from a record that as they got into this era, I didn't particularly like the albums too much. But again, you'd get 1 or 2 tracks that were pretty good. This is off their record 5, which is the 5th album. So 5th album, 6th track coming in at number 4. This is called Leaving California.
Won't be all right, even if the sun
it's a cool song, and for as much production as there is, it's still pretty minimalist, right? You've just got kind of a kick drum backbeat, electronic, I'm sure, but some really pretty progressions. It's catchy without being like overly hooky, because I think the progressions are actually really beautiful, including this middle part. Yeah, so this is kind of the era where, I don't know, these records started to feel a little bit more like they could have been solo albums, you know, and they were getting a lot of help on songwriting. I mean, this particular song had like 6 writers, including Nate Russ, you know, from the guy from The Format and Fun, all that. Wrote lots of songs for lots of people. Had 3 producers. So, I mean, you're getting into where, like, this was more think tank produced stuff than it was, you know, the band. But that doesn't mean it's not good. Yeah, definitely a bit of a think tank on a track like that, where one of the producers credited as Stargate, which is 2 people, 2 Norwegian guys, Tor Hermansen and Mikkel Eriksson, who like produced Firework by Katy Perry, Irreplaceable by Beyonce, bunch of Rihanna songs. So, I mean, you know, these are pop guys, and that's okay. And for the most part, when these guys got real heavy in that direction, I wasn't as interested, but Leaving California comes in at number 4. This is another track from the debut, in addition to the ones I mentioned earlier that was played at the Irving Plaza show, and not as memorable. I mean, I know they played it because I remember it being kind of ballad-y, but it wasn't like very few people in the crowd knew it, and it wasn't one of those where you got the sense that everyone was behind it in the same way as they were This Love, and to an extent Harder to Breathe when they played it. But I recall a little bit thinking, wow, that's pretty good, and that might have legs, but wasn't as memorable as the other tracks, but did go on to become a huge hit for the band, and a song that I think is just really well constructed, well executed from the phase of the band where they were, you know, playing instruments and writing songs themselves. This one is track 4 off of Songs About Jane, She Will Be Loved.
Tap on my window, knock on my door. I want to make you feel beautiful. I know I tend to get so
Now it's got all the makings of a great pop song. Mid-tempo, albeit a ballad. Really cool vocal performance, well constructed. The sections move perfectly. Great kind of layering as you move on. There's some really nice sounds in terms of guitar and bass combinations and things. And of course, catchy. And it felt like this was, you know, this album was obviously a big deal. And you had already had the first couple of singles out. And when this one hit, it was kind of like, all right, these guys are like exploding now. This isn't like just a couple of like good sort of couple of singles on this thing. Like this album really has support. And then Sunday Morning came after this. I mean, this album was pretty loaded. But I think this was the sort of track that took them from being a band that may have put out a decent enough album to a band that was really going to strike gold. They won the Grammy in a lot of ways for best album on their debut, and in a lot of ways supported by songs like this. Great outro where they kind of, start singing in the round. And all in all, a track that nobody could have been too surprised that it hit big. Yeah, I'm sorry, but just musically, that in the round vocal and then that outro is beautiful. I don't care what you say. That's gorgeous stuff. She Will Be Loved, number 3. It was tough to pick between the top two because they're pretty interchangeable, but had to eventually go with one. But here comes numero dos.
Utah, give me 2.
Off their second record, and this was impressive because it would have been very, very easy for these guys to have kind of the single album, considering kind of the style of band they were and even the kind of like personalities they were. I mean, they were ripe to kind of be a one and done in a lot of ways. As you saw with quite a few of these groups, this is still in the boy band era here, right? This is at a time where there were a lot of flashes in the pan and a lot of pretty quick ins and outs of groups, even groups that put together a decent enough album. It was very common that you'd kind of not see them again. So this second record for them was very important. And I actually found it to be creatively very good, and it was certainly commercial and it was certainly poppy, hooky, etc. But I felt that it continued with being extremely well produced, not a big surprise, but also pretty thoughtful in terms of its approach and in terms of even the songs with pop sensibility like this one were well constructed and well executed. And I still really love this song to this day, as much as it got played. And that is track 2 off of their second album, which was called It Won't Be Soon Before Long. This song is called Makes Me Wonder. Four on the floor, a lot of those Maroon 5 elements to it. But a lot of cool musical things going on. The synth part is really neat. Obviously that heavy compression funk clean guitar is a really nice part. The sections kind of move in and out of each other in a clever way and turns it into a pretty complete song. You guys kind of had a knack for like putting out songs that you sort of didn't always want to admit that you liked, but they'd come on and you'd crank it up a little bit. And I don't know, this was kind of one of those. I never really talked to anyone who was like, I hate that song, which usually meant, yeah, that's a pretty sweet song, actually. That was me, at least. Plus it dropped the F-bombs. Makes Me Wonder coming in at number 2. Maybe could have been number 1, but there's a song from an album we've already done, from a producer we've already talked about, that is a deep cut, but takes the cake. Here comes the number 1 song by Maroon 5 in Toph's Top 5.
It's a good thing. the best.
I freaking love this song. It's a deep cut off of Hands All Over, written by the band mostly. A little bit of songwriting support, so you never know. But it's the second to last track 11 on this album, and it comes in at number 1. And if you haven't heard it yet, this is your opportunity to learn a new song that you might enjoy coming at number 1. This is called Runaway.
Get my message, did it send? Or do you get along on your own? Oh, I'm taking time to think it hard. Don't think it's fair for us to turn around and say goodbye. I have this feeling when I finally found the words to say, but I can tell you if you turn around.
Great hi-hat led drum groove. Big surprise 4 on the floor. Good production. Nice little middle section here. Just a perfect song for Mutt. And just a nice groovy song from these guys. Give a shout to, actually, I remember this from the show too. But James Valentine is a really good guitar player. And, you know, not the type of guitarist that's going to get a lot of credit for shredding and all this. But in terms of like guitar tone, in terms of kind of a percussion sort of funk style of playing, and in terms of supporting a lot of Maroon 5 songs in a really effective way, not to mention being a great performer. James Valentine does a great job. And while that song ends with a little organ fade, again, that clean, compressed, chop guitar that you get from James Valentine there really helps this number 1 song along, Runaway. So that's that. So to recap, you got Stutter off of Hands All Over coming in at number 5, Leaving California 4, She Will Be Loved 3, Makes Me Wonder 2, and I guess we're bookended here. Also coming in off Hands All Over at number 1 is Runaway. There were 2 honorable mentions here. The first is Harder to Breathe, which is a hell of a song, and the song that got most people introduced to this band. And the second is also off the debut. And it's the song that they opened the show with. Kind of a weird opener when you look back at it. But, you know, again, they only had like 10 songs to 11 songs to choose from off their debut in the show that I saw them. So I guess their options were pretty limited. But Not Coming Home was the opener at the show I saw, and a song toward the end of Songs About Jane. So 2 Songs About Jane tracks in the honorable mentions, and fairly spread out on the top 5 itself. So, hey, you know what? You get a little bit of everything here on Toph's Top 5. I mean, not too cool for anything. You never know what you're going to get. You're going to get some interesting stuff here on Top 5 with some artists that are probably unexpected. Might even make you chuckle. And to that point, our next 2 Twins episode, I think, is going to be under that vein, but I won't spoil it too much. But for the moment, we will sign off here on Toph's Top 5 as we walk through Maroon 5. Thanks for joining.